now begin with the next technical session. COVID-19 has seen the world turning towards biologists, be it for understanding the virus or finding a solution. To give us an insight into connecting biology learning to societal needs to reach a diverse population, we are honored to have with us Dr. Patricia Castillo-Briseno. I take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Patricia Castillo-Briseno, researcher and scientific advisor. Ma'am is a PhD in biomedicine and a professor at ULEAM, Ecuador, visitor professor at ESPOL, Ecuador, an international evaluator on higher education for European Commission, researcher at CNRS, National Center for Scientific Research, France, from 2010 to 2013. Researcher at Department of Cell Biology, UMU, Spain, from 2006 to 2010. Visitor Scholar, Institut Pasteur of Paris, France, 2009, and University of Cambridge, UK, 2008. Associate Professor, PUCE, Ecuador, 2004. Dr. Patricia Castillo-Briseno is recipient of many grants and fellowships, which include IBLP's Alumna US, postdoc grant by Foundation pour la Recherche Médicale, France, FPU Fellowship by Ministry of Science, Spain, Vice President of Ecuadorian Society of Biology, co-founder of the Ecuadorian Network of Women in Science, LAC regional member to the Executive Committee at OWSD. Ma'am, we are very privileged to have you with us today. We welcome you to take over the session.
Thank you very much, Annapurna. Thank you very much to all the organizers for the invitation. I'm really honored to be today here. Going to share my presentation. The idea of this is sharing with you some of the experiences I have had on the side of the teaching, and well, considering that my background was mostly as a scientist and in basic science, as biology, biomedicine, marine biology, one of the challenges for me was when passing from the merely scientific point of view to a point of view of the learning, of the processes. Sometimes as biologists, and particularly in my PhD, I was working a lot on molecular and cellular levels. And we have that perspective of understanding the brain and the functioning and the memory in a kind of more absolute way. But of course, that is not happening in real life. And we know there is a lot of the environment and the conditions that have an influence on the way of learning. So I'm currently back in Ecuador. I was living several years abroad. And now we're coming back. One of the things like I was trying to do is also working in learning, in applying a teaching and learning processes that are more focused on the acquirement of skills, not only on the understanding the fundamentals of the conceptualizations, thinking that we are now in a time where information is kind of widespread. But what should be more important is how to locate that information and how to differentiate what is validated information, a verified one, and what is not, especially now that we are in this particular moment where fake news, an example, are being a huge problem. Also want to mention that beyond the learning of biology and the part of the science, which I'm very passionate about science and biology, particularly I'm very focused on physiology and how to apply it for environmental problems to solve and especially to understand and then to propose solutions. It is also what I found a need is to work in the approach of the diversity, of the equity, and that is why I have also that logos, not only for my research team, that is Biome, Equatorial and Ocean Acidification. This is the lab, which I'm co-directing with a colleague, but also on the two organizations that are direct of the OWSD, this is the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, and as well as the Ecuadorian Network for Women in Science. But we are focused on working on equity particularly for the participation and recognition and visibilization of the participation of women in science. Thinking like at the beginning, when I returned to Ecuador to do my research and to collaborate at higher education institutions, the idea was to contribute to the advancement of science. But what we found is like, yes, sure, we need the advancement of science to achieve the development, but we cannot do that losing the ability, the skills, and basically the brains of half of population as female represents. So that was another thing that was a key point of changing and considering other aspects and how we do that learning in life sciences and particularly in biology. So today I'm going to tell you some experiences basically in 3 blocks. I'm very focused on applying the approach of active learning with a frame and the wide scope of understanding of what is the active learning. Also, I will show you more examples or strategies that I use when I am applying my teaching, when I'm doing my learning approaches, thinking that it is not only important which approach of active learning we use, or even if you introduce also the passive learning or more so-called more traditional style, thinking that beyond the strategies we use, it is also very important of part of that strategy, if that strategy is the topic and the point of view under which we present that topic to our learners. And the other thing is the last one I will go in this block is on scientific communication as a tool for that active learning, and also to engage students in keeping active their creativity side. So on active learning, I will go just because highly probable you are familiar with the notion. The idea is, well, going in the broader sense. Basically, when we're talking about active learning, what we're doing is talking about absolutely any approach, tool, or strategy of instruction that will allow all the students to engage. And that is kind of challenging because as we have experiences in any situation, it's not like everybody engaged like automatically. There is some cases or several cases in which you have to incentivize that participation. So strategies to do that, I just have listed some of them. This is not an exhaustive list because actually active learning is something that we can be shaping during the exercise of teaching. So we have the reflecting, the way we have to make reflections on what are we studying and how are we studying, and dissecting the ideas, thinking in the parts that are making bigger concepts, the engaging, the relating, so we can fix better the information because we have some idea that we can associate with the explaining, the observing, the contextualizing that is super important, especially when we know there is a huge amount of science and publications that are mainly produced in contexts that are other than the developing world or what we now call the global south. That means that we need to really shape the information and teach about science, but without losing our context, the context of our territories too. The challenge in the thinking, and we're infinite of options that could be developed and for sure will be developed over the time. So, and examples, that is what I'm going to go now, is on the examples, how I was using this during my classes. I'm doing principally teaching courses for physiology in the career of biology, fisheries biology. We also, well, that is just to have you an idea on how it is structured our career and where I am working and doing that activity. So we have a structure for the career of biology that have for the first 4 semesters, materials that are the basic one, like we call the core or the fundamentals, the basics from science. Then they have 2 semesters or 2 terms that are more focused and what is called the professionalizing, and then a last one that is what they are calling itineraries. That is where they choose 3 areas. One of that is for bio knowledge. That is where I focus on the last part for immunology. And for physiology is more on the basic part. So I have 2 times when I can meet the same group of students, one at the beginning and the 4th semester, and the other ones that should be for the 8th semester of the career. And sometimes I collaborate also with courses for applied research, mostly for works in the field. So I started to check in methodologies for teaching to get more engaged students. Also because, well, I'm working in a public university. The courses are normally held by cohorts of 30 to 50 students by one, except by immunology, because that is the itinerary kind of a specialization that tend to be smaller groups. And the approach is different when we have that kind of groups. But in this one, that are the common materials, it was kind of tough to get engaged with the students in that area, and particularly now that we are on the virtual. So one of the resources I start to work with them is first the reflection, not directly on the biology, but in the way we are learning. One of the things was to make them reflect how they are feeling on the classical or traditional basic way of learning that we make a talk, like when we are in conferences, no? We make the talk, they are basic recipients of the information, versus when we have the active learning and we have activities that engage them. And to think on that, I take an example, this paper, that is one I make them to read for 2 purposes. The main one, to reflect on the kind of research. The another one, also to encourage the use of scientific papers as main sources of information. So here is a really nice work because they are basically analyzing exactly that, the perception of students when they are learning on the active versus the passive. And the conclusion of this work is that the perception of students is there is the better way to learn through the passive one, and that is how they are learning the best compared to the other one. However, when they make an evaluation in this study on how they are scoring on the tests, on the really assessment of how much they have learned, actually the students have learned more in a better way for longer time with the active way of learning. So with that is something we make them debates, conversations, discussions, and thinking like, okay, sometimes if you hear a conference, you have that feeling that you have learned a lot and not feeling challenged because no one is asking you or asking you what it was about, or asking you to go in a forum or debate of shared ideas, or even discussing if the paper was designed well or not. And if it is well designed, why we say it is well designed. So we start to develop on that idea. And then I go also in another perspective that is, and this is another very nice paper because it is working exactly in the learning of life science, and it is for the Journal of Life Sciences Education, when they analyze, the authors, if the active learning is working in the same way with the strategies used, comparing male and female, and how is the perception of the students, and then how is the participation. So basically what is summarizing in this paper is the active learning, since we know in all the literature, is promoted like a better way of learning than passive learning. However, when we talk from female groups, and it is inferred that could be also with minority groups, the method of active learning, the strategies we use, should be tailored. Because at the beginning, example, the classical that we make, we have a subject, we analyze the paper, we make questions for inquiry and participation in voluntary basis. Normally there is more participation of the group of people that belongs to the majority. However, when the work is performed in groups and presented by groups, there is a more equal participation, in some cases even more participation by females than by males. So that was another thing that considering, and also for me was very enlightening to know that kind of studies, because it also shows us how it is affecting the social construction, and also how we can encourage to have that participation and inequity in the classroom, and how to tailor the active way of learning of the strategies we use to improve the outcomes for all, because at the end, the outcome is going to be exactly to achieve the engagement of all and each of the students in a group. So the idea of these exercises of reflecting at the end is to go with the students with the whys. Why we are studying in the way of active learning, why this is a better way, why even when they can feel it is more challenging and at some point can feel like they don't know something because the questions are challenging, at the end, the results are better. Other thing is comparing with previous experiences. So I also do that kind of assessment at the end of the courses, checking on, well, how they feel, on how they were learning on the basic with other courses, and how they are feeling on how they achieve skills. They have acquired some skills and knowledge and the know-how from the perspective of the active learning. And that is a common idea on the qualitative side, that the students have always that perception that they can use by the active method, they can use in better ways the knowledge they have acquired. It's in the other way, they know the thing, but they don't know how to apply it in another context. So the pros and cons strategies, of course, because there is no perfect method, and we also analyze that as an example that is more time consuming, that method of active learning. And also going on the importance of challenging their own perceptions. That thing that I can perceive like basic learning could be a better method, but the evidence is showing us that it is not, that is active a better method of learning. And that I take as a point of comparison for further classes later in my courses. So to say, like, okay, one thing is like we can be believing before or have even misunderstood or some misconceptions even that are acquired along the learning process, the formation process, that must be challenged. We always should be critical on our ideas and always verify and get updated. So another approach I use on that is, and I will just show you some slides, as the dissecting of complex concepts. And I use that particularly for explaining concepts, ideas, some problems, like in the case of climate change, that are kind of now mainstream. Everybody is talking about climate change, but as I found in some maybe they say like climate change is like Excel, you can feel that you know it, but actually you don't. So there are concepts that we have to progress and go. And I normally, for climate change, an example, start with the basics. Something that they already know, like an example, the influence on the relation of the sun and the earth for having the different climate along the globe. Then I go on connecting the other parts. So asking and analyzing how, an example, the highlands or the oceans are also playing a factor in keeping that climate, and why we have warm water in the equatorial part, why we have glaciers in the poles, also showing how it is maintained along the way, and how when this is altered, we are going to have problems in other areas. The other thing we also including this kind of approaches is because helps them to see the perspective of the location, in our case, and the Ecuador, to see, well, why Ecuador has warm weather in the coastal area and a colder weather in the highlands. That is kind of common. In Ecuador, we have three regions: the Amazonian jungle, the highlands for the Andean mountains with glaciers and all, and the coastal part and Galapagos Islands. thus analyzing why these ecosystems are not exactly the same among the bioregions, and thinking in the high and the altitude and other factors that influence climate. Then contextualizing, since it is okay, why climate is important for biology and other areas, because it is connected and is sustaining biodiversity, and comparing areas that are familiar for them. In the case of there is a lot of students that are more related to the coastal and marine part. Some of them are related to families that are fisher people, fisherman, fisherwoman, and saying, okay, we have the biodiversity in the coastal part that is related to that conditions of the climate, that warm waters, that the higher raining. It is happening in the equatorial part, and it's happening in common, and that is what is also sustaining biodiversity. And that is happening in the sea and also happening in land. The other, and is going deeper on the things of the climate change, is contextualizing to what is happening to the local part. So we have that kind of white blanket on the influence of the sun and the ocean currents to keep in the climate, but also there is the local influence. So checking an example here, there is a kind of typical exercise like, okay, thinking that we are in Ecuador, or in the place we are, where our ecosystems are mostly located in this area. So we're in an equatorial area, we have high biodiversity, but also we have an average higher temperature and higher rain. That locates us in the tropical rainforest, that is one of the highest biodiversity spots. Same for the coastal, same for the ocean, and start to engage with their territories. Also, now in the virtuality, I have incorporated the guided observation. So they go around their area where they are located and see like which kind of ecosystems they have, and if they are not like rainy and warm, why is that? What are the conditions that should be altering that, and which type of biodiversity we find in that areas? And then going on broader interests. Yeah, and that is especially, I want to focus on this. Well, I will not focus, I will mention by now. But the idea is like going in broader interests, thinking that, in example, I have the opportunity to teach biology for engineers, and their perspective and interest in biology was kind of distant. But when we start to engage in the economical part and the food they consume that is also related to the biodiversity, to the physiology of the species, the understanding of an example, why it is put a prohibition for fisheries some times of the year, because it is related to some particularly biological stage of life. Basically, also fishes that are not allowed to be captured before some size. Thinking in the biological process, why should it be important that we don't capture the organisms before their first reproduction, and asking on how it is sustainable in the future, and how it is depending not only on the economic and exportations, but also on the daily food. So they start to see how they can use the biological knowledge, how they use, how important is to understand the processes behind. And also other concerns, like I used to use, it is that international also perspective that in general we are being affected in this case of climate change. How it is affecting us? Well, we have several extreme events that are directly related to climate change caused by humans, and there can be from storms, the loss of glaciers, the floods, also the times of the several problems we have seen, not just projected, now that we have been currently living the problems, and that is happening around the world, but with the local particularities, and also highlighting that it is not affecting in the same way. That is why we need more science and more technology that is developed from that science, because another data that is important is that the impact of climate change is going to be harder in countries that have low technological and scientific development, because we have actually less tools to face that challenge. And going on the challenge, that is the other thing I like to go on my approaches on learning, and that's the challenging perspectives. We are used to learn things in a kind of mainstream way, but there are another approach, another perspectives, and that is important when we're doing science, and that is highly important when we are understanding biology, as biological systems are quite flexible. It's not like when we're studying on the physical part or the chemical part that we make a reaction and the outcome is predictable. And biology is more complicated to have that because we know that we have plasticity and other variants within a same group of organisms, and even more complex when we are talking from more than one species. So here, what are we looking at? If you look at this, and I don't know, you have Napurna, could you confirm me if people have access to the chat? They can put for comment for everyone or not?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
They have access to chat, they can put.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the confirmation. So what I like, I will have also my chat on the side to see it. This perspective, how familiar is for you? I mean, I can tell you in our side, typically the perspective is like putting the north up, the south down, and always with a focus on the land when we have the representation of the world. However, this other representation is equally valid, is equally scientifically and geographically accurate, and it's a representation based on the ocean. All what is in black, it is the land place. All that is in blue is the ocean. What they have here is going to be Antarctica in the center, and here I have placed the flag of Ecuador for perspective and location to see where are we in the map, how it is represent. So I would love to see in the chat also how you feel when you see our planet represented under the ocean perspective instead of under the land perspective. While you are sharing our thoughts with us that we can check a little bit later, the idea on that with the students and when the younger ones is also like to have a sample that we can see the world in a different way, and it's still valid. Science is not squared. Science is dynamic, is fluid, and we are constantly getting updates, and we are open and flexible to embrace the new knowledge we have. This also in the challenging perspectives is useful because I use that approach also as an introduction, again, to go on the disentangling of misconceptions, as well as climate change. As sometimes people confuse climate change with contamination and other environmental problems, which are not the same. It is a problem also with evolution, and one of the things is like, because this image I have put in the corner down in the red, that the assumption is like the monkey following the human. And that was a misconception, and I like to work with my students in the disentangling, exactly because it's a good way to not only know what is the right approach on evolution, that we are talking about a ramification, that is a tree of the species, no one is following no one. It is a question of ramifications and selection in the process, that also the question that adaptation and evolution is not occurring at the individual level, but it's occurring in the level of the populations and the level of the species, but not on the individual. It's not like the adaptation of the individual, but the adaptation of the species, of the population. And that is, unfortunately, it's a common misconception that sometimes we came back to the Lamarckian idea that is the individual that is changing over the time, when the real idea is that we have a population with several individuals, some of them that have the characteristics that will allow them, or yes, that will allow them to survive in a new environment or when there are changes. And the other thing, like beyond explaining what is the reality, what is the meaning, the real meaning of evolution and adaptation, and that embracement that it should be in the level of population, is also not just to say that this is wrong because it's a wrong interpretation, but to assess where it came from. So it came from basically from a draft on origin of the human. I think that is the right name in English, the original one. And what they say is that the relation, they make the comparative, the author Huxley made the comparative assessment, the comparative graphs on the anatomy of the primates, including human and non-human primates. And he made that in a scale, and just like they are positioned here, like you see in the museum. But that is just an aesthetic presentation. It's not a phylogenetic or genetic relation between them. So I explained them and also show them this analysis that this has been done before, saying like, okay, maybe the right representation that should be making all on the same size so we can make the right comparison in the anatomy and not have the false impression that the gibbon, the monkey is following the other monkeys and arriving to the humans. So that is something, and that disentangling of misconceptions is also something I have been learning from the literature. It's very important to find strategies so people can take other ideas to associate, and that is why explaining that what is the reality, and also where was the mistake? When did it start? This mistake that has been widened through the memes and the pop culture, but it's not scientifically sustained. What is scientifically sustained is this organization and branch, and that is important to have that kind of resources, because what is known is like to correct a misconception is harder than learn the right one on the first time. So the other thing I go on that challenging of perspectives is, again, going in this thing of the evolution and our place in the world is also correcting that perception that human beings are in the top on the evolution, because that is simply not true. We are only one of the several thousands of species that exist and have existed in the world. And this is a very nice representation of retina to see that phylogenetic that I use a lot with my students, that looking at this is our place. Our place is not in the top of any tree or the mountain of any representation, but another line among the thousands of lines that represent the species. And we came from common ancestors, and we keep, we are not on the top, but we are actually a late appearance and evolution, which have not been enough challenged if we compare an example for bacteria that have been millions of years ago. And basically several species of bacteria have little changed over the time. So that could be maybe a more intelligent way of a more effective or more evolutionary form of life, since it was successful from the beginning and has been successful over the time, even when the ecosystems and the environment and the climate has been changing all over that time. So that is also a question of perspective. That doesn't mean that we're not important. Of course, we're important, but not more important than the other organisms. And that comes also again in having that conception that our place among evolution, also our place as society. And that is another strategy I use to teach ideas, but also to encourage the students I want to encourage the empowerment in them. So when I think as the using of role models and also being a role model, and that I will encourage you a lot, and that sometimes and the teaching is professors feel not everybody feels so confident, and particularly females tend to be even more shy or avoiding that, to don't be too showy. That is what we feel. But it's important that you show up, you show out, because that is encouraging your students and other youngsters and the youth to follow the path of science, to learn more about science. So I like a lot to use this slide. I used to, these are our captions of the slides I use in my presentations on some of the classes. And this is the link Margulis and the endosymbiosis. They are in Spanish, the most of them, because here we're Spanish speakers originally. And also one of the connection I make is like, we study a biological substantial process. An example, the Escherichia chlorotica, that was found to be, it is an animal that is able to do photosynthesis. And that was kind of blowing the mind when that was discovered. And it was found that how they are able to do that is because they get the chloroplasts from the food they are ingesting. Some of the algae, they are digesting the algae, but keeping the chloroplasts, they incorporating them within their body that allows them to do photosynthesis and use the nutrients from that way too, not depending only on the ingestion. So this is kind of modern discovery, but it's a kind of it's a symbiosis, but we can also see an endosymbiosis, like similar what we found also in the corals with they also have an algae that is inside and is contributing to the process. But in that case, they started from the beginning of their life cycle. However, in Alicia, she's absorbing it during its life. And I relate that with the first scientist that presented information on endosymbiosis as a part of the studies in evolution, which is Lynn Margolis. I have a comment in the chat that we need evolution for nature, for flora and fauna, and that's absolutely true. We are all, and we should also add to that flora and fauna the fungi, and also bacteria and the protists, in example, the protozoan, which happens to be the most numerous group in the biological world compared to multicellulars. So also I will encourage, and I will encourage my students also to think in which are the role models. That could be scientists, but they could also be people in their family, and their teachers, people from other places they have known, the teachers in the school or during previous to the college or in the college, that have tell them or show them things that they trigger them or directed them to study science, to study biology. And also in going the same, I mean, like, it is like that. I have a lot of works of collaborations for teaching. And this is another thing what I mean by being one you is not only you in your classes and giving talks and sharing your ideas, but also on getting a community. So this particularly was a series of talks we organized for the previous course. We were organizing together with another professor at my university. We were doing different courses, but we matched on the common aspects, trying different scientists to speak and share the ideas of science. So have people from entomology, people working with herpetals, people working with bats, people on the ecosystems in the rivers, also in the sea, in the jungle, people that is working in hydrology, and how that is part of a project, interdisciplinary project that is actually directed for the conservation of ecosystems and biodiversity. So going in the interdisciplinarity and showing them people on the diversity we have here, and also from abroad. So that is a thing that we can do on the way of providing new perspectives and enhancing the interest of the students and promoting also the internationality. I will go a little bit faster here because I think we are quite advanced on the time now. But I just want to propose you also the importance in the courses of presenting context and the global and also in the local. And the classical approach on that is also important to have the perspective is in the GDS, the Sustainable Development Goals, because it is not only an approach that is affecting our countries that are signatories that we want to achieve that agenda on the 2030, as hard it could be, but also because it's a good way of presenting the need of multidisciplinarity and the need of searching in biology and lab sciences, because basically involved or transversal or present in part of each one of these goals. So we can take the climate action, we can take the life below the water, the life on land, but also in the development of innovation and infrastructure And that is another approach I use with the students, is like thinking on the biomimetism. So applying that things that are inspired in biological systems to solve for problems on that perspective, and checking on examples around the world, and then placing them to think, like, if we have this problem, how we could solve using that, and which kind of collaborations. Go and search which research team is doing that kind of research that you need or that you think that could be useful to solve this problem. So that you start also to know how is the context. And I like that also to go on the local examples, particularly in the focus and example. Now we have the science diplomacy more formally construct. So this going to this interaction between the scientific world and the diplomatic world, and how they are merged and enhancing each other, fortifying. So I will focus especially in the diplomacy for science, because that is quite important an example when we're thinking in the access to fellowships or scholarships that will be another kind of motivation to study science, because of the opportunity to pursue further studies and also living abroad and having that international experience. And at the same time, that experience that could be then transferred to all countries and going to enhance the local development of science. So in that cases, I used to have examples, global ones that we know well, saying like we have several frames of collaboration that can be for education in the case of UNESCO to solve problems of climate change, or for equity in science, or for the Pacific applications of nuclear sciences and the International Agency for Atomic Energy, for biodiversity and others. But the kind of flag now, it is the work we have done on the COVID response. And that is again why it's important to learn about science. When we are going to use it, we don't know exactly, but for sure we're going to use it. And that was what was demonstrated with the COVID pandemics, not only for the development of the vaccines, but also to fighting the fake news, to understanding science, to improve the science literacy that we could call it, the capacity to distinguish between scientific information and evidences and what is fake news, intentional or not, but fake news. It is highly important, and that is why science is also important. So for me, it's that kind of motivation for my students. Like you see, when there have been several fake news or scams, knowing science, learning to do science, getting that perspective on the importance of accuracy and verification of the information will save you of problems and will, at the end, be in benefit of everyone, like in the case of COVID. In other cases, for more local approaches, what I'm sharing to you here is, and also so they don't feel that everything is like so global or so big at scale, but also on local scale. This is a project I'm participating in to assess the impacts of ocean acidification, which is part of climate change, the alteration of the chemistry of water in the context of climate change due to the excess of carbon dioxide emissions. And what we're doing here is we have 18 countries involved. This is all in the stars and the red stars that are there. And also the local part came like, this is a global collaboration on the part of the exchange of science we are doing, enriching the community. We have chemistry, have chemists, biologists, also some biochemists within our team, people more dedicated to aquaculture, people more dedicated to oceanography. And we do always have a kind of interesting international team to run our local projects, because actually these are 18 projects under an umbrella to assess the impact related to seafood. That also in a way to communicate to the broader community, because when we talk about seafood, now it is important for everyone, the thing of climate change, and particularly it's important for decision makings. And other people that is not so related to sciences or biology of the climate change science, but now they see why we should be doing this science. So in the case of Ecuador, we work with shrimps, the white shrimp from the Pacific. It's a native species and it's our main product of exportation. Actually, Ecuador is among the three biggest exporting countries for shrimp in the world. And for us, actually, this is the main product of exportation after oil. And so they can, so for my students, it's like, okay, we have seen the COVID that is really huge on global scale because it is a pandemic, but also we have the kind of collaborations that are global, but direct to assess the impacts in the local level and to find solutions in our territories, in the local part. And that's like clearly how we can contribute. And just going to close, that is my last approach I have been using more lately is the use of scientific communication as a way of learning and also to promoting science literacy. Me, myself, I have been involved in activities of scientific communication, but I found that with the students, it was particularly useful, an example for a better understanding of the paper. So we read a paper, we analyze it, but then to how to explain, and particularly we have to explain in a very short format, like can be some social networks, like an example, Twitter, makes an extra effort for them to get very clear and very concise ideas in their minds. So I have three main strategies of scientific communication I've been using for teaching of biology and engaging with the society also. So my students see this not only to do science for the research and solving problems, but also their role as communicating science for a wider understanding of the public. And it was also very useful to see how was the reception. That was actually quite good. So we make I use particularly three kind of tools on these or strategies. One is the posts on the social networks, where they are putting some images and text extracted from scientific papers, and using tags, so we are able to track how these are working in the network. So an example, this is in Spanish, it is for physiology and for future biologists. And the tag to my account, so I have a notification that is mainly for the logistical. But the physiology and future biologists has been very useful to also get the sense of community between the students in this activity. The other thing is the infographics using open software. I try to use always open accesses from resources from open access that are, I mean, no cost for the students, so they can make the test, see what is working better. So an example, we have Canva, BioRender. Of course, all these options have the paid one, but also the free one that works sufficiently enough for communicating. And they get another skill on also, and not only for learning, but something that they can do. And they enjoy also that the showing the infographics they have produced. And storytelling on progressive exercises. So basically, it's analyzing the content through the tools we have seen in the previous slides, going and constructing the story, and then using a format of visualization that was lately a format of short videos. And the idea was to go in animation. So I will go and show you this exactly. Let me go out. This is the one, what I told you about the posts. This is in the case in Twitter. Sometimes they use other social networks. I have related this on the search tool. And you can see these are several things that I try to then to display in the more animated way, but at the same based on article paper. So these are the students also sharing what they are doing, also giving them some platform. So they have also that kind of gaming strategy on doing that. We also make, this is a schedule, this is an organized exercise beyond the tagging. There is also a timing to do that and the extensions, how many posts. I mean, they have it is a guided exercise. It's not just like go and put the posts, but going by some rules, some images, thinking also in they have to learn the copyright, they have to declare when they use images and also learn where to find those that are under copyleft. Well, and that is that you can see also by yourself. It is in Spanish mostly, but maybe with a automatic translation can also work. Then on the infographics, I'm going to show you another one. I have selected, it is a nice infographic, but especially I am interested in showing you that because that was part of the engagement with the students, was this exercise on doing the practice, and that was an adaptation of the observations in the lab during the pandemic, since we were closer in the university due to the COVID-19. And so I said, okay, work with the organisms you have at home. Can be your pets, but other people work with spiders or ants or other organisms that they can find at home. And they were observing, analyzing the schemes, and then doing that exercise of communication, explaining the physiology and the functioning of the science. And the final one, that is the exercise for the storytelling. And however, this was done with a shorter group, that is a group of immunology. And it is a more dynamic scheme when we have smaller groups. What I'm going to share you is this video. This is in Spanish, so I will make a kind of simultaneous translation. And with that will be almost, okay, great. We have more questions. We will go on that just in a minute. So.
Hola, soy un linfocito citolítico natural, NK para los amigos y Natural Killer para los friends. Me pusieron a hacer...
So what it's saying, the cell is like, it is a cytolytic lymphocyte, known also like natural killer by some friends, and AK by the other people.
El nombre porque tengo la habilidad natural para destruir las células cancerígenas y las células...
And that name, I was named that way because I have a natural capacity to destroy infected cells and cancerogenic cells and others that are infected and
infectadas que rondan por ahí. Oh, pero ¿qué es eso? Ayuda, por favor.
So what is that? And the other side is saying like, help me please. And the lymphocyte
una célula infectada. Me acercaré a ti, ¿ok? Ya, me anclaré y liberaré estos gránulos. Será por tu bien. Jeje. En realidad era por el bien de todos.
So the cell is saying like, okay, this is an infected cell. I will get closer to you and get anchored from my receptors and release substances of lysozymes that will be for your good. And then when the infected cell is dead, the lymphocyte is saying like, well, actually it was for the good of everyone. This work is really hard to do.
Qué duro es este trabajo. Como ves, a esto me dedico junto con mis compañeras. Nosotros pertenecemos a la inmunidad innata y acabamos con células infectadas o defectuosas.
So now I'm saying like, well, now you see that is what we do with all my friend, the other NK cells. And that what we do is cleaning the body from infected cells and other that are not working properly, keeping the system. And we belong to the family of lymphocytes, like the lymphocytes B and T.
En mamíferos estamos en el tejido sanguíneo y en el linfático.
We are in the blood and in lymphatic fluid in mammals.
Linfocitos, así como nuestros amigos los linfocitos T y B, pero no necesitamos antígenos para activarnos, al contrario, siempre.
And the other thing that is explaining is like, it is like lymphocytes T and B, but she didn't need the antigens to be activated because actually she's always ready.
Estamos listos.
And that's it. So it was really interesting as an exercise. Also,
hola, soy un linfocito citolítico natural. NK para los amigos.
Sorry. Okay, so that was a very interesting exercise because also that gave a lot of engagement and was like the next level of gaming and the learning of biology. And then also on the evaluations, it was clear that this exercise was giving them more tools to retain the information and some concepts. So that is, I will go on the questions, but first, now it's poll time. So I have made this in the Menti. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but probably yes. And this is only to see like, well, thinking and the strategies I have shared with you. I would like to know your opinion and ordering them and in the way, how you feel it will be useful to apply for your own courses. So we have two options. We can enter in the menti.com and use the code 149820 and 1. or go directly to this link. I will share with you in the chat the link. I think I can do that. So you can go directly and we can record your answers. So you are going to have the options, and the idea is like from the 12 options you have, that is one by each of the strategies, which one you consider is the best from the 12 ones. So I will go on the presenting here. And these are the 12 options I have explained. You know, on the reflection that was related to the how are we learning, what are we learning, the relating to familiar context or the territory or the time we are living now, the contextualization, the challenging on the ideas, the disentangling of the misconceptions, the scientific communication, the reasoning on how it is happening, the role models promotion, the comparing context when we're going in the global and the local, the problem solving and the scientific communication, and the last one is like a mix of most of them. So, and that is, well, again, the link. You know, I told you it was the menti.com with the 1498 201. So meanwhile, we can see how is going the poll. I will go on the, okay, in the chat. So maybe that could be for the panel. Okay, so seems like we have the winners on the problem solving, the reasoning, scientific communication, and the case of role models, the challenging, the related, and the mix. That is kind of, yes, actually, I think it is kind of a common place. This of the problem solving tend to be kind of on strategy, and the challenging is kind of new because also it means also getting off the comfort zone, but at the end it is showing to be also very effective, especially when we have to correct misconceptions and to develop a more critical perspective. So I'm going to, well, the poll is still active, by the way, but I just want to go on just thanking for my students because I have learned a lot from the contact and from their process of learning. I'm learning a lot. And also to you, leaving our message that always science for development. And to do that, we need to get everyone involved. We need all brains hands-on on doing science. So thank you very much. My email is, of course, also available. This is also my user on Twitter. I normally also manage my DM messages on the social networks. So whatever question you have, it would be nice. I will show you. I think you're looking now at the last, so we can have a caption on the final winner. That is still problem solving, the challenging, and the scientific communication, and the mix of them. That is basically what most of the papers is saying is at the end, when we are using active learning, it needs to be a mix and a shaping. So I don't know if we pass on the questions or how we do that. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, ma'am. But we have a couple of questions in the chat box. So would you like to take them now?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, ma'am. The first question is, which flora and fauna species is going to change self fast according to evolution?
Not exactly in the name of a species, but in general, the rule is the species that have higher rates of breeding because they have a faster transition between generations. So it is more probable that they can drive to a population that has more of the acquired of the adaptive characteristics. However, that depends also on the genetic variability. That is also a very important factor.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, how can we decide that a particular strategy can reach to the maximum perception of majority of students?
This is a difficult one, but basically that depends on your group. And for starting, what is recommended, and also for me it has been very useful, is starting with group problem solving. That is like how they get everyone hands-on. You put a problem on each one, different problems, and you make them to work in team, by teams. So for especially to break in the ice at the beginning, and then you can shape what is going better for the next phases.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. One last question, ma'am. Technology has transformed many aspects of how students engage with learning. What do you see as the greatest opportunity related to technology, to science and education?
For me, one of the main advantages is the possibility of the asynchronous work that is stronger than we were in the presential part, and the virtuality is more feasible even because of the connection. We at this point we know that happens, that someone cannot connect the day of the class, but we can have that strategy so they are not only active on your subject on the day of the class, but all over the time. And I have found that this year really useful for the learning process on fixing the idea, that they are like, the brain is in the background, always working on that. And that happens more in the virtuality than in the presential one.
Thank you, ma'am. There is, I think, one more question, ma'am. How can we develop interest in students to learn research papers when they are more into the digital world?
That is hard for sure. But one of the things is like, what I have used with my students is like taking at the beginning papers where you have the scientific communication notes and the paper. So I asked them to go on both of them. The first one like an introductory so they get more familiar. And then going at the advantage and seeing like how they have gained it in addition when they see the paper. An example, sometimes it's simple things like methodology. This one thing is like you can say that this is the findings that is mainly said in the scientific communication articles, but in the scientific paper you are able to know how that was made, how you obtained that information. So they get that notion like what is the benefit of getting that extra information and what it deserves the effort ongoing on the scientific paper. But however, that is always requiring an encouragement and sometimes more motivations like, okay, you have to bring me a new paper for another species and you cannot repeat, go in the gaming. Like you have to take me the physiology for the respiration. Each one has to have a model from a paper. So suddenly they are pressed to do that, but in the gaming way.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Thank you for patiently answering all the questions.
Okay, I'm so glad, and it is really nice that there has been the interest in the public. So yeah, thank you.
I think, ma'am, from learning biology to meeting societal needs to keeping the students engaged in the classroom through active learning, you have shared with us your expertise in teaching and how to make learning more interesting. I, Dr. Roslyn, on behalf of the American Corner Hyderabad, convener and co-conveners of this workshop, express my gratitude to you, ma'am, for an excellent presentation and for sharing your experiences. In spite of the time difference, you have taken your time out to be with us to share your expertise, proving that physical boundaries cannot stop learning and exchange of knowledge. Thank you very much, ma'am, for enlightening us on active learning frames, strategies, concerns and challenges, perspectives, and problem solving. We're grateful to you, ma'am, for highlighting the significance of scientific communication as a tool for active learning. We look forward to have more sessions from you, ma'am. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. You are so kind. It has been an absolute pleasure. And for me, it will be an honor to share again a time with you. Thank you very much.
Definitely, ma'am. We look forward to that. Thank you.
Thanks.
We now move towards the valedictory session to conclude the 4-day faculty development program. So we begin with the valedictory program. A famous quote by Tommy Hilfiger, which I unquote: "We are in the new age where change is the only constant. I encourage you to embrace it, to be inspired, to push the boundaries, innovate, and find your own." I, Dr. P. Roslin, on behalf of American Corner Hyderabad, convener and head of the Department of Microbiology, Dr. M. Shailaja Raj ma'am, co-conveners, Dr. P. Kanchana, Head Department of Biochemistry, and Ms. Shauni Nivedita, Head Department of Biotechnology, faculties of the Departments of Microbiology, Biochemistry, and Biotechnology, St. Francis College for Women, conclude the 4-day faculty development program on an international workshop on effective teaching of STEM courses online on this note. Good evening, everyone, and warm welcome to the valedictory session. I invite co-convener and head department of biochemistry, Dr. P. Kanchana, to present us the report on the 4-day faculty development program.
Thank you, Dr. Roslin. Am I audible?
Yes.
A very good evening to everyone present here. Welcome to the valedictory of the 4-day faculty development program on international workshop on effective teaching of STEM courses online. On behalf of the organizing departments, I, Dr. Kanchana, Head Department of Biochemistry, present to you the final report of the event. Keeping in mind various problems faced by today's teaching fraternity due to online mode of interaction, the departments of microbiology, biochemistry, and biotechnology came up with an idea to conduct a workshop to ease the process of teaching offline and in particular online. The 4-day FDP started on 27th October with a short prayer session and the welcome address delivered by our principal, Dr. Sister Sandra Hota, St. Francis College for Women. Insights and themes of the workshop were discussed by Dr. M. Shailaja Raj, convener and head department of microbiology. Mr. David Moyer, public affairs officer, public affairs section, U.S. Consulate General, Hyderabad, and Dr. Joe Christopher, public affairs section, U.S. Consulate General, Hyderabad, American Corner, gave deep insights of the activities conducted by the American Corner and importance of STEM education for women. This was followed by the first technical session by Dr. Anil Kumar Chella, Adjunct Professor, Department of Biology, University of Alabama at Birmingham, who emphasized on the fact that online learning could reach its maximum potential through team-based problem solving, visual learning, and concept mapping. Professor Mamata Dadla, Professor and Head Department of Sericulture, Fulbright Scholar, USA, Registrar of Sri Padmavati Mahila University, explained the benefits of online education like flexibility, accessibility, global knowledge, students controlled study time, and better opportunity. The final technical session for the day was headed by Dr. Praveen Kumar Mamadiala, Joint Secretary, Telangana Social Welfare Residential Educational Institution Society, Hyderabad, Telangana. The speaker discussed about the science, innovation, and technology and spoke on patentability, criteria, novelty, non-obviousness, and industrial applicability. On day 2, we started the first technical session titled Open Educational Resources in Higher Education, was headed by Professor K. Srinivas, National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, New Delhi. The speaker discussed the importance of open educational resources and how each individual can contribute to the pool of resources. Open repositories of various forms like audio, images, text, and video were all clearly brought to the notice of the participants. This was followed by the second technical section by Dr. R. Rajalakshmi, Assistant Professor of Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University. Ma'am presented a wide variety of teacher and student-centered teaching methodologies that can be used to make any class interesting and keep students engaged throughout the teaching period. Dr. Vidya from Bhavan's Vivekananda College, Hyderabad, took over the technical session 3 titled Making Biology Learning Relevant to Students. The speaker presented a self-conducted survey on the reason for a student's reduced passion in the sciences and pointed out the major reason for social disturbances. Further, suggestions were made to make the conventional classroom learning more interesting was discussed with the participants. On day 3, Dr. Krishna Shankar Kusuma, Associate Professor, Jamia Millia Islamia University, gave the participants a detailed demo on video editing applications like OpenShot, OBS, and audio resources like Ben Sound, and briefed the participant many more such applications that come in handy for e-content creation. The second technical session, headed by Dr. Jayanti, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, helped participants understand the Bloom's taxonomy a little better as she emphasized on its 3 important domains. The speaker also demonstrated the use of testing portals, TESMOS. This was followed by the third technical session by Dr. Magdalena Velastica Aldiana, Head of Stream Program, USA State Department, who elaborated on challenges faced to connect basic biology to experimental biology and emphasized on how the progress of students can be assessed in innovative ways. Ms. Camila Castillo spoke about her journey of writing a book and how she was inspired by the people around her. Dr. P.N. Lakshmi Shanmugam, Tamil Nadu Teachers Association, shared her expertise about the professional competencies of a teacher on this day, which was day 4, the final day of the FTP, followed by a panel discussion on online education, opportunities, and challenges. The panelists were Dr. Sister Sujata, Department of Computer Science, St. Francis College for Women, Dr. Jovita Joseph, LVPI Network, Dr. Vidya Ma'am from Bhavans Vivekananda College, Dr. Shailaja Raj, co-convener and head Department of Microbiology, St. Francis College, shared their knowledge and expertise on all aspects of online teaching and different challenges teachers face and how to overcome these problems, not to take the burden on us, we teachers, were the suggestions given. There were so many take-home messages which we can implement in our teaching and make the teaching learning processes more effective. Many questions were asked by the participants and all the questions were rightly addressed by the panelists, which was followed by Vidya Ma'am's session on rubrics tool for making learning goals and evaluation criteria explicit for both teachers and learners. Ma'am, as always, gave many interesting ideas to use rubrics to keep the assessment simple and consistent. Dr. Patricia Castillo Brisino, scientific researcher and advisor, professor of physiology from ULEAM University, South America, spoke on connecting biology learning to the social needs to reach a diverse population. Ma'am shared the strategies of active learning versus feeling learning in response to being actively engaged in the classroom and gender differences in active learning, dissecting complex concepts in parts and many more, which concluded the technical sessions of this 4-day faculty development program. Hope this 4-day elaborate and intense workshop was an enriching experience to all the participants. Thank you everyone to be the part of this workshop and wishing all of you a very happy Diwali. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kanchana, for briefing us on the various sessions. 4 days, 14 sessions is truly overwhelming. I think it's definitely going to help our participants who will now be sharing their feedback. So I request participants to volunteer to give feedback for the 4-day faculty development program.
Yes, myself is Dr. Sridhar from Department of Biochemistry, Srimathanan College, Trichy, Tamil Nadu.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah. First of all, my sincere thanks to the organizers for organizing such a wonderful and informative international FTP on effective teaching of STEM courses online. We are well known that today's education is rapidly moving to online mode. As a teacher in the field of science, we should equip ourselves to teach effectively in online classes. I think this FDP will help us for having effective teaching in online. FDP like this will provide us to learn various e-resources available in the teaching biological concepts in an effective manner. FDP also enlighten us various tools available to create an e-content that is very, very interesting and more and highly informative and very useful, because nowadays we are creating our own e-contents to explain to the students. It is really informative. The FDP also provided us the information about the open educational resources in higher education and also increase our digital competence in online teaching. It's also interesting to learn about how to evaluate the student using various methods such as project-based assessment and rubrics. They are really informative and very useful. The FDP has also through the lights on innovative teaching methodology and also provides platform to improve our creativity. Overall, I felt that the FDP provided an in-depth knowledge and training to the teachers to improve their skills in online teaching. Once again, I thank the organizers, Department of Microbiology, Biochemistry, Biotechnology of St. Francis College and American Corner Society for organizing such a informative FDP. We learned a lot in the past 4 days. I request organizers to organize more FDP like this to equip ourselves to have an effective teach in online mode. Once again, my sincere thanks to the organizers. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you very much, sir. So can you be on video mode? Dr. Sridharan is Head Department of Biochemistry from Srimad Andavan Arts and Science College, Trichy, Tamil Nadu. Thank you very much, sir, for your inputs about the workshop. I now invite Mamata Pingili, Associate Professor from Vageshwari College, Karimnagar, to share her thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Roslyn. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Thank you very much. Yeah, good evening, one and all. So I take this opportunity to congratulate and thank the organizers, St. Francis for Women and the American Corner, Hyderabad, for conducting such an elaborate and informative international FDP on effective teaching of STEM courses online. The FDP was so well organized and it was so systematic. It was a great experience listening to the group of experts in a span of 4 days. The experts have been enlightened with their expertise in wide areas of education. Thank you, organizers, for hosting the FDP, and we wish you would come up with more such workshops, and I also thank the organizers for sharing the recordings of the speakers. I've actually missed one of them yesterday, so I thank for sharing recordings. Thank you, organizers, for the workshop, and a huge applause to the organizers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mamta ma'am. Ma'am, can you be on video mode? Yeah. I request all the participants to be on video mode.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. I now invite Ms. Usharani, Department of Microbiology, Little Flower Degree College, Uppal, Hyderabad, to share her thoughts.
Good evening, Kanela. Good evening, Shailaja ma'am, convener, and co-convener Kanchana ma'am, Shaun ma'am. Really, this workshop is very nice, well organized. I congratulate all the organizers for smooth conduct of the workshop. First of all, I would like to thank all the organizers for giving me opportunity to upgrade myself with the new techniques and technology. I thank all the speakers also for sharing their experiences and how we can overcome with the certain small issues, small problems where we will be in confusion, which method to follow, like methods of teaching, and especially I really it helped me a lot regarding Vidya ma'am. That is how to teach the biology, which helped them to get the job and which helped them in personal health and even planetary health. That will create interest in the students. So really I thank Vidya ma'am also for teaching this, even rubrics, how the faculty should potentialize for all kind of students, teacher-centered and student-centered method that I could learn from this FDP, and especially open education resources. Many sources were given. So really I thank the speakers. How to use or go for other advanced topics where we may be lagging, like use of Swayam, MIT, NPTEL, Central Library. It helped me a lot and how to prepare interactive videos, use of partial tools, concept mapping tools, how to motivate the students. And in today's session, cognitively communication is very important. That also I could learn. Really, I thank all the organizers. This session is very wonderful session. It's a different, we could learn many things. I thank, once again, I thank all the members. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Usha ma'am, for the valuable feedback. And I also thank Dr. Patricia Castillo-Bricino ma'am for the feedback posted on the chat box. Thank you very much, ma'am. It was a pleasure to have you with us. And we were really honored to hear you, ma'am. And thank you for sharing your expertise with us. We now have Dr. Sonal Upadhyay, Department of Biotechnology, Vikas College, University of Mumbai, to share her valuable feedback about the workshop.
Good evening, one and all. I, Dr. Sonal Upadhyay, Assistant Professor in Department of Biotechnology, Mumbai University, would like to thank organizers for giving me an opportunity to give feedback on international workshop on effective teaching of STEM courses online. I would again like to thank organizers and all committee members of St. Francis Women's College, Hyderabad and American Corner, Hyderabad for planning and conducting very insightful learning workshop. For me, this workshop generated a lot of innovative ideas in teaching. As a researcher, I always preferred activity-based teaching, cognitive and experiential learning. All the speakers were stellar. Since day 1 to day 4, who talks about pedagogy and tools to enhance online teaching, innovations in teaching, teaching methodologies, open educational researchers, resources for higher education, developing e-content, project-based assessment in experimental sciences, rubrics, opportunities and challenges in online teaching, etc. I would be happy to explore collaborative research and also to participate in future offline and online activities. Thank you and wish you all a very happy Diwali in advance.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We now have with us our very own Miss Mary Kavita, Head Department of Botany, St. Francis College, for a moment to share her views with us.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. It's a pleasure. Well, when I heard about the workshop, it was like, again, one more. And I think as teachers, we all dread to sit on the other side and be listeners. But then I won't say that this has been very futile, because we all strive to center ourselves to better as a teacher through various techniques that are available. And I think this workshop helps us to take a time to stand back and take note of the moment. We need to reevaluate and innovate. And the workshop also greatly expanded the understanding of mindfulness and the various educational resources available with us, which we can use, explore, and we can use it as a tool to develop the students' interest towards any kind of a course which is there in biology. We all have a concrete curriculum, but we don't have enough tools or time probably to reinvent. And this is very, very disastrous. So this workshop was not anything extra. It was essential to the learning and achievement, and it gave us a lot of deliberate ways to help students, to understand the topic, and only just not being as a counselor or just giving them advice or answers, but how we could make it more interesting and make them think in a very cognitive and a pragmatic approach. And it also gave a framework for all that we do and what can be manageable, what can be doable, and the group activities that were suggested, which was very, very different from the usual traditional methods that we are already following. It was by and all a very excellent workshop, and I learned quite a lot, and I think I've got inspired to learn more, and what I have in hand is just not enough probably. And it was very beautifully crafted, executed by the research and practice, which was coming ahead in form of the beautiful erudite speakers, and very well thought about by the departments of microbiology, biochemistry, and biotechnology in collaboration with American Corner. And one more word was the final discussion, the panel discussion which was there of the various implementation tools and techniques that we could look forward to in our day-to-day classrooms. That was also very, very informative. And I'm sure we have taken quite a lot, and now it's our time to execute it, implement it in our classrooms without taking a step back. So thank you once again, and indeed looking forward for more such workshops. Thank you, Dr. Rose.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mary Kavita, for your valuable feedback. I now invite Ms. Nahida Fatima, Assistant Professor, Kasturba Gandhi Degree College, Hyderabad, to share her views.
Good evening, ma'am. I'm Nahida from Department of Microbiology, Kasturba Gandhi College. It was a great learning for me through this workshop of effective teaching of STEM courses online. This workshop gives the detailed insights on various open educational resources, different methodologies of teaching and assessments, how to design and implement a course, and ways to connect biology learning to societal needs. All of these will surely enhance our teaching capabilities. Also, I appreciate the efforts taken to facilitate hands-on training. I would like to extend my gratitude to all the speakers for sharing their immense knowledge and making this workshop interesting. I would also like to thank the departments of microbiology, biotechnology, and biochemistry of St. Francis and American Corners, Hyderabad, for organizing a very helpful and a well-structured workshop. Thank you.
I thank all the participants for your valuable feedback. It definitely motivates us to conduct many more such workshops, which will be helpful in teaching and learning, making teaching and learning more effective. Thank you all once again. Participants, to kindly note, the feedback link will be posted in the chat box. Kindly fill in the form. The certificates will be mailed to the participants based on the feedback forms submitted and the assignments that were submitted by the participants. Thank you very much. Showing gratitude is one of the simplest yet most powerful things humans can do for each other. It is now time to thank everyone who contributed for the success of the faculty development program. I invite Ms. Shauni Nivedita, co-convener and head Department of Biotechnology, to propose the word of thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Greetings to one and all. I deem it great honor to thank all the dignitaries who took part making this international workshop a memorable one. The objective of this workshop, as you all know, is to enable the faculty members to hold the online classes in a more thought-provoking manner, instill encouragement, and to inject the knowledge related to their subject. This 4-day international workshop rolled on in a smooth way by the team effort of all the faculty members from the departments of Microbiology, Biochemistry, and Biotechnology, St. Francis College, in collaboration with American Corner, with a wonderful aim of promoting science. I extend my hearty thanks to our principal, Dr. Sister Sandra Horta, for having motivated and encouraged all the faculty members of the 3 departments. She has played a pivotal role behind the success of this workshop. I also thank our Vice Principal, Dr. Sister Shirley, and Dean of Academics, Dr. Malika Shetty ma'am, for their excellent support and involvement throughout this workshop. I extend my heartfelt thank you to Mr. David Moyer, Public Affairs Officer, Dr. Joe Christopher, Public Affairs Section, U.S. Consulate General, Hyderabad, who played a phenomenal role to promote the STEM courses across the globe and being instrumental in encouraging us organize this workshop by providing the financial assistance. The illuminating and unparalleled talks of all the speakers for all the 4 days need a special acknowledgement and appreciation. We are truly grateful to all the speakers for their informative talks. Starting from day one, I would like to thank Dr. Anil Kumar Challa, Adjunct Professor from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, Professor Mamata Dadala, Head Department of Sericulture, Fulbright Scholar USA, Registrar of SPMVV Tirupati, Dr. Praveen Mamidala, Joint Secretary, TSWREIS, Hyderabad. From day 2, Professor K. Srinivas, NIEPA, New Delhi, Dr. Rajalakshmi R., Assistant Professor, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, Dr. Vidya Janalagadda, MD and Site Head for Arcus Therapeutics. And from day 3, Dr. Krishna Sankar Kusuma, Associate Professor at AJK Mass Communication Research Center, Jamia Millia Islamia, Dr. C. Jayanti, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, Dr. Magdalena Valeska Aldana Segura, Head of STEAM Program, US State Department, Ms. Camila Castillo, Universidad de San Carlos de Guatemala. From day 4, Dr. Lakshmi Shanmugam, Tamil Nadu Teachers Education University, Dr. Vidya Janalagadda, MD and Site Head for Arcus Therapeutics, Professor P. Castillo, Scientific Researcher and Advisor, Research Professor of Physiology, ULLEAM University, South America. And in the panel discussion, Dr. Sister Sujata Yeruva, IVLP Alumni SFC, Dr. Jovita Joseph, LVPEI Network, Dr. Vidya Janalagadda, MD and Site Head for Arcus Therapeutics, Dr. Shailaja Raj, Convener, Head of Microbiology, St. Francis College. I extend my thanks from the bottom of my heart to the convener, Dr. Shailaja Raj, Head Department of Microbiology, and Dr. Kanchana, Head Department of Biochemistry, the joint convener, for their strenuous efforts put into for the success of this workshop. My special thanks to all the faculty members of 3 departments for having handled the process of organization in a marvelous way. I extend my thanks to Mr. Ravi Kumar, Coordinator of American Corner, St. Francis College for Women, for coordinating with us for all the 4 days. Your effort, without any doubt, should be specially appreciated, sir. I also thank Mr. Sridhar and Mr. Ram in a special way for all the technical assistance provided. The participants, faculty of various colleges in and around India win a special thanks for the interest and zeal they exhibited all through the 4-day workshop. I am sure we all have a lot of take-home information with us now. Before I close, I once again thank each and everyone for the grand success of this workshop. A gentle reminder, request all the participants to kindly fill in the feedback link that is posted in the chat box. Thank you very much.